All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our CADIO webinar series. Thanks for joining us today. We are so happy to be joined by Dr. Rodrigo Lopes, who's joining us from the Clinical Psychology and Psychotherapy Department in the University of Bern. Dr. Lopes has a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Bern in Switzerland. He has published within the areas of psychotherapy for depression, anxiety, therapist development, empathy, and is now focused on developing and testing internet-based interventions. He is also a psychotherapist in a private practice, and he's going to be talking to us today about his work in some mediation analysis in a factorial optimization trial. So, Dr. Lopes, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Jillian. Thank you so much, the whole CADIO group, for inviting me, for having me here today, and the interest in listening to our work we've been doing here at the University of Bern in Switzerland. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's also a pleasure to be here with Linda. I will mention soon that had an encounter with Linda 5 years ago, and that was pretty defining for this work to happen. So I'm going to present today one specific analysis we've been doing. That's the mediation analysis. But before that, I'm going to give you all an overview to the whole project, which is the Optimize project. It's funded by the Swiss National Science, which is the main science funder in Switzerland. And the logo you see here, SHINE, that's our program on social anxiety disorder. It's an internet-based intervention. Here in our department, we've been specialized in doing different internet-based interventions. That's been going on for over 2 decades now. And I just made a screenshot of the first page. I don't know if you can see the website here, but these are the studies we have going on at the moment with different mental health issues, such as hearing voices. This is about depression, separation, losing someone, social anxiety for kids, and reducing marijuana use, and a wide range of psychological problems. And one of them is the program I'm going to present you today, which is SHINE. This is a program that we developed for social anxiety disorder. And there is a lot of quite robust evidence that these ICBT, or cognitive behavior therapy-based, internet-based programs, they work, but still there's room for improvement. That half of the people recover significantly. And of course, one idea is that we identify which are the active ingredients of the CBT programs for SAD, for social anxiety disorder, and that we better understand the change mechanism so we can better address the interventions. The first time that I met the factorial trial to use, we were impressed by this protocol that many of you probably know from depression. And so when we were writing this research, for the funding, I was very lucky that Linda Collins came to the University of Zurich, which is 1 hour here from Bern, and I was happy to do this certificate of attendance. I tried to look for a picture, but I didn't find a picture, so I put a certificate here to prove that I was there. And but that was very a very important moment for the project. We tried funding for this project for a first time, and we only asked for one initial question was the optimization question. And this was denied. So the optimization question, meaning that we will study the main effects for this SAD program. The second time we asked for the funding, we added a second question, which was understanding the mechanisms of change for the internet interventions of a social anxiety disorder. And this was very praised by this committee who evaluated this project. And this was due to one conversation that I had with Linda, that was very important that we could have this insight of expanding a bit the scope of the project. So this had two ideas, which was understanding which components were important for this essay, for this treatment package, and which mechanism change might be underlying this main effects. Our program Shine is based on a very known treatment package for social anxiety disorder, which is based on the Clark and Wells model, which assumes that social anxiety disorder is a process all linked between the safety behaviors, the processing of the self as a social object, and how we focus attention in ourselves, in our performance, instead of focus attention on the outside. And by this, I activate assumptions that my social performance is not good, for instance. And with that, I start avoiding situations, or I go to situations using safety behaviors, which means I go there, but I don't go there naturally. And in turn, it avoidance, I get more anxious. So this is a treatment package that's quite widespread. I don't know the crowd here, whether they are psychologists, but everybody who's a psychologist would quickly assume in a treatment for SAD would have psychoeducation, cognitive restructuring, attention training, and exposure. So these are the four components. This is how Shine looked like. This is the main screen of Shine. Sorry, it's in German, but these are the components that I've been mentioning to you. And I'm going to show Shine quickly so you have an idea what this treatment is about. But this is usually what's done in a clinical practice, in routine clinical practice and ICBT. Most ICBT programs have this configuration. So we went for I would say this was not a standard most procedure, because we start with a package which it's quite recognized as a package. And this I'm bringing here one page of each component, because we're going to talk about the components in depth, more of the results of the components. So this is the psychoeducation. You have a lot of reading. You have some material, some graphs. So this is basically some basic explanation about social anxiety, and a bit explanation about treatment options of social anxiety. In the end of this module, we do have some questions, some multiple choice questions, and some open text that people can write what they learned with the program. And in this component, we also have a diary where they can keep track of situations which are triggering their anxiety. So situations and themes that are triggering anxiety. So they just record that. They don't learn to do anything with that yet. Another component is we call it realistic thinking, but that's the cognitive restructuring that is most common for. So we made sure that this language is adapted for the regular user, non-psychologist, of course. And in this, the core of this component, cognitive restructuring, is learning how to do a reappraisal of the initial social negative thought. So this is a very common strategy in CBT. Many of you probably know that. In which you record the situation, what kind of thoughts did you have, how likely you think that the thought was true, and then you do the participant learn some strategies to rethink that. So is that likely that this is not true, and how do you feel then when you think in another way? So this is a regular thought record to CBT, and specifically for SAD. So all the examples that they have there is for SAD. The third component is the attention training. So the aim of this is to teach people to, instead of looking at themselves, focus the attentions on themselves, to focus the attention outside. Because when you focus too much on yourself, you end up performing worse, and then you end up also having more negative thoughts, right? And there's different exercises. One of them was the short stories. So for instance, this is a funny short story that somebody was trapped in an avalanche in the mountains, and then this guy, he had a pack of beer, and then he decided to drink the beer, and he peed his way out of the avalanche. And this is a short story. The whole story that I told you is there with some details, not so many. And then the person, the participant, after reading the story, he would present the story to an audience. And then he was initially instructed about focusing on the audience and not in his own inadequacy or stuttering or sweating or symptoms, but instead of focus on the audience or focusing on something else focus on a story. So he would really have to focus on the story. And then we had these videos, and this is our team. I take the opportunity to present our team here, or part of our team in the University of Bern. Sorry for Noemi there, because she's acting as she's sleepy, and that was a bit. So we rehearsed that. That was part of her script, to look at the camera and look a bit bored. So this would be an extra challenge for the social anxious person to present and not focus on that stimuli, not focus on himself, not focus on that stimulus, but try to find something out there. So someone who was attentive and of course the story. And after that, the person is asked to rate how much percent they focus on themselves and how much percent they focus on the task. So here I made a random rating that I focus only a little bit on myself and a lot on the outside. And how much anxiety you feel. And then how do you rate your performance? So in these graphs here, they're quite random. They're not a real person. This is just our admin testing here. But you're supposed to see the columns here that you have. When you focus more outside, you have less anxiety and you perform better. In the attention training component, the third component, we also have some audios in which the person is instructed to pay attention to themselves, and then outside to stimuli, to audio, what's going on in the room, and so on, and then back to you, and then back and forth. This is a kind of a standard attention training exercise. And there was also some suggestions regarding some mindfulness exercises that you would um, focus on something else rather than yourself. The fourth component, that's exposure, which is quite a powerful component in anxiety treatments in general, in treatments of all kinds of anxiety. And here's one screenshot explaining the basics of the principle of exposure, that although you feel your anxiety growing, right? You expect that it will grow forever and in levels that you don't imagine how much. But in reality, when you leave the situation, you leave the situation high anxiety, but then when you stay, the anxiety it goes down and then it keeps down. So it explains the principle of exposure, and then it helps people by scheduling exposure exercises. So I don't have a screenshot here of the hierarchy of exposure. So first of all, it helps people to do a hierarchy. What's zero in as an anxiety triggering situation for you, and what's 10. So you start with the ones which are 0 and 1 and 2 and so on, until a situation which is really anxiety triggering. So, for instance, presenting in a large audience, or asking someone out on a date. It depends. It's quite interesting to see how people have different takes or different hierarchies of anxiety. But after you do that, you suppose this is all linked in the program. You're supposed to then plan those situations, do them, expose yourself to them, go into a party and talk to someone. Ask for information of a stranger on the street, or things that people can control, of course. And then there's the last part of this questionnaire that is about how did it go. So first you plan it, and then the program follows up to ask how it go and how you evaluate your anxiety. So these are the four components, and this is the optimization factorial trial that we designed. Pretty standard. Many of you know this kind of diagram. And we planned an N of 464. We did a prior calculation, and this was quite challenging. It's quite a large number, so we do have some power within each condition. I don't present here the power calculation, but it's on our paper. I could maybe talk more about that if you are interested. But yeah, fortunately, we made it. It was quite ambitious, but we made it in 2 years. So that was, I think I have a slide here. Yeah, August 21 to July 23. So yeah, in 2 years we collected this data. We had everybody sign an informed consent, and we had everybody made a diagnostic interview prior to being admitted to the trial. And we also had a post interview and a follow-up interview, the same diagnostic interview. This is based on Mini, a bit reduced form. And we could reach that sample size. Most of our people came through the internet, except this is a flyer. So we had this flyer spread around several places in the city. But yeah, the majority of the people we reached via social media. We are quite fortunate that we found a couple of influencers on Instagram, and they kindly made a couple of videos which went viral on on TikTok. I don't know whether TikTok is also huge in USA, but it's been huge in Europe. I had no idea about that, but we did have this Instagrammer had an account on TikTok, and she was quite a hit. Yeah, and then we also had some paid ads on the Google, and we also had a help of a company to recruit those people. They're called Probando, and students from the university and others. And these were the participants. This is quite typical statistics for people looking for ICBT. And they came from Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. A little from other countries because the program is in German, so speaking German was one of the criteria to be admitted. And we direct our campaigns to those countries, but sometimes other people came. Yeah. Our main outcome measure was a composite variable of SAD, and it was composed of two measures that are quite standard in the SAD research, outcome research. One is more focused on an interaction, so how much I worry or I'm afraid about interacting with other human beings, and how much I worry before that, how much I worry during the interactions and after interacting, for instance, with figures of authority, people from I'm interested in, and the other is more focused on the performance. So these are the main difference between those two. Each one is composed of 20 items, so it makes up 40 items. So it's more about performance. So when we have to do something to instance, for instance, presenting something, or yeah. And then I'm going to start with some results. I'm going to go quickly. So I'm going to present two studies we did. The first study, and they are one is a continuation of the other. So the first one is the main effects. This has been just recently been accepted for publication. So the main results, they show that the main effects study, they show that exposure and psychoeducation, they were quite important so they were significantly more effective than their absence. So when you compare people who got psychoeducation versus the people that did not had psychoeducation, the ones who got it they performed significantly better, and the same for exposure. And we did not find main effects in so this is in attention training and cognitive restructuring. I show here just descriptives of people who recovered. So one conclusion that we got from in the main paper is that if you analyze them separately, they all had some kind of effect, but the comparison between the present and the absence, that was really different. For instance, in all treatments we had people recovering, so which is then having no social anxiety diagnosis at post, right? So this also happened in cognitive restructuring. It also happened in attention training. But the difference between the two were not so big, right? So this is also what's showing here in these descriptives for the SAD measures. So we now know that exposure and psychoeducation, they present significant main effects. So the second study, which is the one I'm going to focus more here, is the one that I'm currently working on right now with the precious help of Gillian Strayhorn from this team. Um, and in which we're doing this, which she called and the factorial mediation analysis. So we pick up the two the components who had the main effects, exposure and psychoeducation, and we focused and the question was what mechanisms might be involved to explain the effectiveness of these components. We also went one step further to and asked ourselves whether mediation analysis could also maybe explain why the two other components, cognitive restriction and attention training, were not more effective than their absence. So these were the hypotheses that we did a priori, which was also something that it was praised by the funders, because normally mediation analysis is done after a trial is gone and is done. Then when you publish the main results, what can you do with the data set? And then you say, okay, we have these and these measures, let's see what mediates what, right? But we had an a priori hypothesis already in the initial stages. So we did assess possible change mechanisms. These change mechanisms, they are hypothesized in the main theoretical framework of CBT for social anxiety disorder. The evidence of them, it's sparse, and yeah, as if some of you also work with mediation, you also know that it's also difficult to reach agreement sometimes in the methods and the results. So we thought that we would have and inspired by Gillian Strayhorn's paper, we thought that having these questions within a factorial trial, using the same methods, the same team, the same procedures, that we could maybe have an advantage in answering those hypotheses. So hypothesis number one is that psychoeducation would reduce social anxiety symptoms by increasing participants' knowledge about SAD. So I know more about what SAD is, about this anxiety, about this, about its causes, what maintains it, and when I study it by reading, I would know more, and this would target. I would feel better, or I would. The second hypothesis is regarding cognitive restructuring. It would act through the cognitions. So if I think differently, if I think less catastrophic about the social interactions, if I think more realistic, if I'm more flexible with my thinking, if that changes, I'll feel less anxious in social interactions or performances. Hypothesis number three is that if I focus less on myself, and if I can learn to focus more on the task or on the outside or on the people I'm interacting with, I would then decrease my social anxiety feelings in general, or symptoms in general. Finally, the last two hypotheses is about exposure. So exposure would act in two different pathways. One would be decreasing avoidance. So if I put myself out there in these situations, if I go to more parties, if I don't know, talk to more people, I don't know, if I do more presentations. This will give me, in the end, I feel less anxious. So with the exposure principle that I habituate with the fear, right? And the other hypothesis would be that if I decrease the use of my safety behaviors, so safety behaviors can be, for instance, preparing a lot for a party, rehearsing conversations, or I go to a party, but I don't really interact with anyone. I kind of jump around. So reducing safety behaviors, drinking alcohol is also considered a safety behavior. If I reduce those, I would then have less anxiety. So this is the hypothetical framework we worked on with. These are the measures that I use for that. I think that the concepts are clear. I can go back to these measures if someone is interested in something more specific, but those are self-report is a limitation, but yeah, this is those are all self-report measures that measures those things that I mentioned. The last known of those is a knowledge of said test, which is developed by a team of researchers in Sweden, but we did adapt to the content of our program, the content which was offered to the participants. And it's multiple choices. It's for multiple choice. One is correct. So we evaluate the number of correct answers they have out of 11 questions. And then we also weight them with the certainty they have in that answer. So they also answer, how sure were you about that answer? And then the participant says, I was pretty sure, I was not really sure, and then I just guessed. So this we weighted with this certainty level. So if someone just guessed, I think they would have 0 on that question. So even though they got it right, they would have 0. But yeah, this is very specific. I can come back to that if in case needed. These are some characteristics of the analysis we did. So we did use methods to fill up the missing data. So at post, we did have around 36% of missing data, which is more than we wished for. But in the range, in the realm of internet-based intervention, I think it's okay. Factors were coded between 1 for presence and -1 for absence. And we did mediation analysis using Jamovi, which was quite handy. I can also talk more about that. And we did bootstrapping. So for the mediation analysis, I'm gonna show we use the joint significance test. So we looked whether the path A, so the path between the component and the possible mediator, whether this was significant and whether this path here was significant, and then we one versus the other, and then we also analyze the total effects. So these are the results, and then here we can also discuss a bit about the methods. Yeah. So first we did one single model for each one of these hypotheses here. So it's 5. We did an analysis with 5 single models, and then we found that in these single models, psychoeducation did have a total. So we replicated the findings from our main study, or let's say for the study with the main effects, which means which means that psychoeducation did have a total effect on social anxiety, and exposure did have a total effect, main effect on reducing social anxiety. And in the single mediation model, it was quite clear that we had so gaining more knowledge indeed mediated the symptom reductions in SAD. And the same with the safety behavior. So I don't know if you can read that anywhere. These numbers here, they are betas. So these are standardized effect sizes. So psychoeducation had a medium effect size on gaining knowledge, and so on. So we consider an effect size medium until 0.3, 0.3 small, until 0.5 small, medium, and up to them is large. And it also happened in the safety with the safety behavior. So reducing safety behaviors, so at midpoint, did mediate the effects of exposure on social anxiety symptoms. A note here, sorry, I didn't put that on the analysis, data analysis. We analyzed, so one basics of the mediation analysis is that you have the time precedence, right? So social anxiety is measured at 8 weeks of treatment. And this is what we calculated for the treatment. So this is post-treatment social anxiety. And the mediators, they all evaluated after 4 weeks of treatment. So 4 weeks and 8 weeks later. We did not use the follow-up data, which is 6 months after the randomization, because we thought that the effects can be due to many other factors. And in this analysis, we focus on the post-treatment. So as I said, in the factorial mediation analysis, we focus on trying to understand what are the effects, what can explain the effects of the components which were actually effective, or they showed main effects. We did some other explorations of these two main components which were effective, psychoeducation exposure. And the model was a multiple mediator model in which we assessed all the mediators, as you see here. So this changed the picture quite a lot, which is somehow expected when we have more factors in regression of multiple variables, right? So in this multiple mediation model, psychoeducation was not anymore mediated by knowledge. It did have a main effect, or an effect, median effect on reducing or on knowledge gain. So the people gain more knowledge, but the effect here then showed to be very small. So this was not significant anymore. And what appeared was that avoidance appeared to be mediating the relationship between psychoeducation and social anxiety disorder. And with exposure, it didn't change so much. So, one thing changed. One was that safety was still mediating. So reducing safety behaviors was mediating the effects on social anxiety. But we also encounter an not really surprising theoretically, but that was not what we hypothesized, but that exposure reduced social anxiety through cognitions, through reducing negative social cognitions. So when people thought more realistic, they would that it had an effect on reducing social anxiety, and we can discuss that in the end.
Rodrigo, can I just interrupt you and say that we're approaching this period for questions, and I know you have some more content about exploring those components that did not have main effects, but maybe we could just pause for a moment and see if there are any burning questions about these results so far and everything you've said.
Great. I'm gonna then open you guys here so I can.
I do um have one question to sort of kick that off that I think you could also, of course, draw upon your explorations of the components that did not have significant main effects as well. But here's a question. Have the results of your mediation analyses here suggested to you any possible revisions to theory or maybe to the initial conceptual model that you outlined?
If those results they suggest revision of the theory, yeah, the thing, not to the theory yet, or at least I couldn't see it yet. I'm thinking more. So we've been thinking more in optimizing programs, right? In optimizing ICBT for SAD. And in this, I think it brings insights. For instance, if I would formulate the programs again, the same program, if I would reformulate now, I would, for instance, include more questions in the exposure module. I would include more questions about thoughts. Because I mean, when you're exposing yourself, you go there full of thoughts, right? You think a lot before. Everybody knows that, right? You think a lot before, you think during, and you think after. I would address that somehow in a way that maybe this would be more effective. So I think the exposure model lost the opportunity to, as it is now, loses the opportunity to address cognitions more in depth.
Mm-hmm. So
So
you're referring here to the finding that exposure had that effect on cognitions that was not hypothesized a priori. And then the understanding of that maybe suggest that you could better explore that with the exposure component moving forward.
exactly. So what I don't know if it's a review of the theory, because the theory actually the theory implies that. So we did not formulate that hypothesis before, because I mean we should also limit ourselves to some things, right? But the theory already formulates that. So I don't think this is a breakthrough in theory, but yeah, in the methods or in the approach, yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in this
Right.
sense, these exploratory multiple mediating models, they were more useful. Like you have a broader picture. So the single models, you kind of close your eyes to all the rest, right? So you focus on
Mm-hmm.
one possible relationship.
Great.
Thank you for your question.
I'll encourage our other attendees, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask your question, or put your question in the chat for us, or send it to me directly, either way. One other question for you, Rodrigo. You mentioned briefly about the funding of this work and how there was initial hesitance maybe, but then the idea about investigating mechanisms was really appealing to funders. I think that there are probably people here, maybe on this session or just in general in the United States, we have some funders as well who are very interested in mechanisms. I wonder if you would say a little bit more about the experience of, getting people interested in this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should be really fair and cautious with this story, because there were two different funders. So the first funder did not fund this, and this was more a career funding directed to me, and the other was research funding to a project, right, in the uni. So these are quite
Mm-hmm.
different characteristics. And I'm not sure if the first committee really got the idea, but the thing is that I only restricted to the main effects. So I wanted to make to 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 separate the components and study them separately, or uh, disentangle the treatment package, right? So this story, I don't know if they didn't understand that, or maybe they weren't. And I don't know who these reviewers were, so it's probably a different. Yeah. The thing is that the story that we told later, so when we rewrote the story, it had this appeal to the understanding the mechanisms, right? This is kind in psychology, in clinical psychology, we've been talking about this, like, is we don't really know how to do it, but we all agree that okay, we should look at it. We know that it works, so we need to kind of try a step further. So I think this sketch was good. So it the story was a bit maybe more catchy. But again, two different funders. One was the EU, the other one was the SNF,
Mm-hmm.
Switzerland. The competition in Switzerland was also smaller than with the whole EU. So there are many things that muddy these claims, but yeah. Um, I think that studying or trying to open the open box, the black box a bit more between outcome and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I'm
Yeah, and
trying to do
in
now.
the spirit of opening that black box, did you investigate interactions in any way? And will you if you haven't yet?
Not yet, and then this was so I'm really I have a few more slides, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm jumped direct. So one of the things is that we can investigate the the interactions, right? So this how for instance psychoeducation would interact with exposure. So we didn't do that yet, and this is quite an open question. We want to do that. We need kind of backup to people to do that, and that's almost an open invitation if to the group if
Mm-hmm.
you're interested in helping us looking at those interactions, because this could also be a to learn more about social anxiety treatment with that. So far not. That's on the agenda.
So I'll ask a question that is sort of teeing up the last couple things you might have been about to say since I interrupted you for questions. What about those findings with those factors that did not have significant main effects? What were some key takeaways?
Yeah. So yeah, we went we did explore them, and we found, for instance, so these are the two components which did not have many effects, right? Cognitive restructure and attention training. Interestingly, we found that reducing cognitions does have a medium effect on reducing social anxiety, right? So it's pretty interesting to look at those paths, I think. So this is, although there's not a total effect, and although there's not a mediation effect, I think it's interesting to look at this relationship separately. And cognitions appear to be still very relevant, changing cognitions, right? Which is, of course, one of CBT's kind of core theoretical piece. We were quite surprised that the so attention training did not have any effect, but self-conscious did not appear to be or changing self-consciousness to a more outside conscious of the outside did not really have an influence in any term. So I think here, when I look at this, what I see is, okay, what can we improve in this in this component, maybe we can improve something in this component, or we can leave it. And this is the idea of the optimization, right? We're getting people to do this, but maybe they shouldn't waste their time doing this and do more of the exposure. But I see here that we didn't promote that, but whatever promoted that, which and we know now that exposure did, for instance, exposure did reflect on the outcomes. So I think that's I think looking at the mediation, then it informs is extra information to optimization. You know, so if rebuilding a program, a new version of program, I would really take this into consideration. So we did also explore in a multiple mediation model, the components which did not have main effects, and we still see that cognitions, for instance, that avoidance and safety, they all have medium effects in reducing social anxiety in both of them, but it's not due to the program, so not due to the component. So that's a bit the overall picture of this analysis.
Wonderful. It's so interesting. You know, one of the things that I think is fascinating about this is that this collection of analyses you've done really emphasizes which of your hypothesized mediators seem to really have an important relationship with social anxiety. And your findings here suggest that these two components that really had the strong main effects seem to successfully target all of those important mediators, which might help us just further understand why those were the ones that carried that effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, really, really, really interesting. And thank you so much for your presentation. If I can take this last moment, a little bird tells me that Linda may have found a photo. So if you could stop your screen share and we could switch to Linda's for a moment.
Yeah,
Oh, wow, there it is.
there I am with short hair. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
I did remember there was a picture, but I didn't find it.
yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Linda.
Yeah, that was we had a very fun time
Yeah,
at that workshop.
it was a great time.
Great.
Mhm.
Well, thank you again for the very interesting presentation. Thank you everybody for being here with us today.
Yeah, I'm available for more questions if someone has. So